Hello, welcome. I'm Mary and I hook books. I crochet things inspired by audiobooks that I listen to. And this is going to be my August wrap up. This month I moved, so everything is still a little bit chaotic. And I love my new place, but the air conditioner is so incredibly loud. And it was over 100 degrees almost every day last week while I was moving. So hopefully I won't have to stop and start the video too much. The only thing that I don't have turned off is my kitties. Oh, Mariah. And their little bells. So hopefully that is not too distracting. But let's get into it. I read The Hollow Places and I immediately made my friend and coworker read The Hollow Places. This is so cool. I forgot who recommended it or why it was even on my TBR, and when it came up at the library, I actually almost put it down about a third of the way through because I didn't know where it was going. And I am so happy that I kept going. It's a really cool horror, fantasy, dark Narnia type situation. And I actually really wish that this was a series because I want to know more about these other worlds that were hinted at. And I love when exposition is dripped like that and just makes you wonder after you finish the book. So this one I gave 4.75. It was a little bit of a slow start, so that's why it's not a 5 for me, but I loved the characters. I loved the sense of humor. If you don't jive with the sense of humor, you might not enjoy this book. It also had really great creepy horror moments to it, so it was a really cool balance. And there's a weird otter thing. just trust me and go with it. So I made a little otter stuffy. I hope my air conditioner is not too distracting. It is super loud, but it's also Texas at the end of August. So we're just gonna do the best we can. And the next book that I read was Espresso Shot. This is a 6, 7, somewhere in there in the Coffeehouse mysteries. And I really like this series. I like the romance. It's a very slow burn. It's an older female protagonist. She's very independent. She's dealing with a lot of very relatable family things as an older woman. And this particular episode in the series had so much going on in the best way. There was murder and attempted murder and kidnapping and robbery, and it was such a good episode in this series. So I think I gave it a 4.75. It was a really, not every book in a series is fantastic, but this one really was. And for our coffee house mysteries, of course, I had to make a little coffee cup. The public library near my new apartment has a book club that meets every Thursday, or the first Thursday and third Thursday of the month at 6:30. So I'll probably never actually go to it because I don't get off work until 6 on Thursdays. But just in case I'm ever able to go, I wanted to pick up a couple of their selections. And the first one was Tuesday Mooney Talks to Ghosts. And this was so good. I love the kind of sarcastic, campy sense of humor, but it also had a really great mystery. And it was goofy, but also explores a lot of the complexities of grief and adult friendships and finding who you are when you're out of college, but you still haven't really established yourself as what you want to be in life. And I really enjoyed the mystery, the relationships, all of it. So I think I gave this one a 4.75 as well. And Tuesday Mooney, they refer to her as Wednesday Addams a day early. So I made a cute little Wednesday Addams or Tuesday Mooney. The next book on the book club selection is Our Missing Hearts, and I really enjoyed the mixture of a dystopian future that is oh so possible and relatable, and most of the things in the book have happened, very similar to The Handmaid's Tale. But I really liked how they melded that with some literary fiction. So if you are more of a dystopian sci-fi reader and you want to get into literary fiction or vice versa, this is a really good place to start. I loved the characters. I loved the complexity of the mother. I was terrified at how realistic this really is, how easy it is to slide from, well, of course patriotism is a good thing, to, well, now we don't read books anymore. So terrifying, heartwarming, very beautiful prose. There were a few little slumps where I got a little distracted. I wasn't as into it. But overall, such an amazing book. And Our Missing Hearts, of course, I had to make a sad blue heart. I finally finished All Dead, and this was a 12 book compendium, so I think my totals are actually different, but I finished, I think, the last 4 or 5 in this series, and I really do respect a series that's willing to kill off main characters, especially in a post-apocalyptic world, because it could definitely happen. So I had issues with a few things. Turkey basters exist. So that just like eliminates a lot of the conflict in 2 of the books. But for a post-apocalyptic zombie fiction world, these were fun. They had the main characters we follow throughout all the books, but they also have little vignettes that are a little bit shorter and sprinkled throughout, and a lot of those were fun. All post-apocalyptic fiction can be a little bit problematic. This was less problematic than a lot of them, which I did appreciate. It's also a little bit meta. It mentions zombie movies and films, so I thought that was kind of fun. Overall, just fun, schlocky. If you're missing The Walking Dead, then this is a really good kind of, it scratches that itch. And 3.5, it was good. I don't regret it. I had fun, but it wasn't fantastic. And I made a little zombie squishy, a little cuddle zombie. I love the X-Files. I love David Duchovny. I am doing the Buzzword Readathon all year, so I picked up Truly Like Lightning. I love occult. I love polygamy. I love all those kind of elements. And I wanted to love Truly Like Lightning, but I got 10% into the book and 3 chapters of nothing but character introductions and backstory, and I just couldn't do it. So that unfortunately was a DNF. I was also looking for another really long book that I could just kind of get lost in while I'm moving. And at the library, Dahlgren came up, and this is a 35-hour audiobook, which compared to the 143 hours of All Dead is relatively short, but fairly long for any other kind of book. And the prose really reminded me of Ray Bradbury. I am a big fan of classic sci-fi, but this was way too literary and was going to take me more attention than I had to give while hauling boxes up 2 flights of stairs. So this is a soft DNF. Someday I might go back to it, but I did not have the brain power to devote to it at the moment. Another disappointment this month was Like a Charm, and this is a book of short stories. I really like the premise of interconnected stories, and I think it can be done really well, where you give writers a prompt and they all have their own little take on it, but they're all interconnected. This unfortunately just did not do it for me. Almost every story was problematic in some way that made me uncomfortable, and some of them I will still think about, which I guess is good, but they were all not fantastic at best and really awful and problematic at worst. So I would not recommend. It's an older short story collection, so I think it kind of shows that wannabe edginess of the early 2000s and late 90s. But I really do like this charm. It's got a lucky penny in the middle, inspired by that book. So that's nice. You want to be in the video, otherwise you wouldn't keep coming over. You wouldn't keep playing next to Mommy while she's filming. I picked up the nonfiction How to Win Friends and Influence Fungi, and I enjoyed this. I wish I was able to drink because they're like science and beer, and it's just a really fun concept. I wish that some of the sections were longer. Like, some of these were really interesting and I want to know more about them. And I might have to go off and find these scientists and find some more information on the topics that they brought up. So that was really fun. It's quirky, short snippets of science. It's entertaining, can make you feel a little bit smarter. I think this is either a 4.5 or another 4.75. I had such a good reading month. And I normally don't make plushies for my nonfictions, but it's a fungi! My other nonfiction that I picked up this month was the Midwest Survival Guide, and I loved this. As someone who lived in Ohio for a couple years, this just felt so validating. Like, I felt so seen, and I'm in the South now, and South nice is different than Midwest nice. Like, Midwest nice is a thing, and it's generally a very sincere thing. It's kind of weird coming from the rest of the country, and it was a huge culture shock going from Ohio to New Jersey and then to Texas. Like, all of those are very different cultures, and I loved the Midwest Survival Guide. I gave it 5 stars. This is not only hilarious, but it is actually a little bit informative. It's got some recipes in there too. So 5 stars, a lot of fun. The audiobook is read by the author, who was also, he's a YouTube star and apparently was a news anchor as well. Continuing with my sequels, I read No Time Like the Past, and I think this is the 5th in the Chronicles of St. Mary's series. And the last one wasn't my favorite. It kind of had middle book syndrome, where it was just getting things ready for the next story progression, but this book was so good. Again, it had so much going on in the best way. We had 3 time travel adventures, we had some attempted murder, and we had our fun classic St. Mary's Day Out. They had a sailing competition, and that's why I made a little boat for the St. Mary's Day Out. This had humor, it had revenge, it had classical history and time travel shenanigans, and I absolutely loved it. So I think this is a 4.5, a really great outing for St. Mary's. Another sequel that I read this month was the Andromeda Evolution, and this is the sequel to the Andromeda strain, and this, kind of like The Handmaid's Tale and the Testaments, this was a long time coming. The Andromeda strain was really good. I did read the audiobook, which can be a little bit tough because of all the timestamps and such, but I liked it, but it was much more dry. The Andromeda Evolution has not a lot more character work because that is not Michael Crichton's strong suit, but a lot more than the original Andromeda strain. And it is very much a thriller. It's very fast paced. There is existential danger. The entire world might get eaten by the Andromeda strain any minute, and we're the only ones who can fix it. Overall, women in STEM, robotics, a lot of really good hard sci-fi. Michael Crichton apparently is an author in this world, so that was kind of a fun meta element to it. So I did really like this one. I think I gave it a 4 or a somewhere in there. And I actually got some glow-in-the-dark yarn, so I made a little bacteria for the Andromeda strain evolution. Speaking of glow-in-the-dark, I read The Luminous Dead, and this was really interesting. It was very claustrophobic, which is something I enjoy in my horror. It's also interesting how it's told through the eyes of just 2 characters. There are a couple little found footage flashback type things throughout, but you're really just following these 2 women and their experience the entire time, and seeing their relationship grow, and it drip feeds their motivations and why it's so important to both of them to do this. And I really like that form of storytelling. There were a couple times where we were a little bit too much into our characters' inner monologue, and I was like, oh my gosh, can we just like keep going? I get it. This is scary. You miss your family. Okay, cool. Stuff can happen now. So that's why it's not a 5-star for me, but I did really enjoy this. I really wanted to keep picking it up. I could have done without the romance. I see how in the end it, I guess, served the plot, but I think they could have just been 2 people who were bonding. I like LGBTQ representation, but I didn't think it was totally necessary in this book. But overall, I did enjoy it. And Luminous Fungi. I have glow-in-the-dark yarn. So this Halloween, I'm going to put these all over my desk, and when we turn the lights out, I hope that they'll glow and freak out my students. I read The Dead Take the A Train, and I can't decide how I feel about cosmic horror. A lot of cosmic horror just does not work for me, but I think a lot of cosmic horror doesn't have any light elements or comic relief, so it just kind of feels depressing and weird. But The Dead Take the A Train had not a lot of funny moments, not like a lot of laughing out loud, but a lot of like, huh, cute, kind of those comic relief moments that I really appreciated. Our main character is kind of a screw up. She's got some drug problems. She's got some alcohol and financial difficulties. She's really good at capturing monsters and sending demons back to hell, that kind of thing. And she has great taste in music. She listens to The Who, and not The Who, The Who. And I squealed out loud when she made that reference. I love it. Mongolian metal. It's great. And her friend from years ago comes to visit her, and her boyfriend is not being great to her. I guess it's her husband now. Her husband was not great to her, and he's looking for her. She's running from him. And meanwhile, our main character's ex-boyfriend is working for an evil organization, and they are summoning the Mother Who Eats, which is a cosmic horror. And they say, you wish this was Cthulhu, because Cthulhu would be easier to deal with. So I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of really interesting character work. There were some really funny moments. There were some crazy, scary, gory horror moments too. So this was a really fun, I don't know if, yeah, fun, we'll say fun, cosmic horror story. And unlike some books where I could just do without the romance, I loved this romance. I love their friendship turning into love and affection, and I rooted for them. Like, other characters kept saying, well, just kiss, and by the end I was like, just kiss. So I really liked the romance in this one. So I can't remember, I think it's like a 4.5. I really enjoyed this, and any excuse I can get to make this pattern. I made the Mother Who Eats, so she's pink with red wings, and a little baby Cthulhu again. And this wasn't inspired by anything. A student asked me if I could make it, and so I did, and I just want to show it off. These little loveys, I'm actually kind of falling in love with this. They're easy to make. It took me about 3 hours, and she actually paid me what it's worth, so I have a hard time asking for what my projects are actually worth when I sell them, so I tend not to sell them. I promise I will get my Etsy store going at some point, someday. But I really just wanted to show this one off. So that was my August 2024 reading and crochet wrap up. I had a really great month. What about you? What did you read? Did you make anything? I know I inspired one of my students to take up crochet, and she made a little giraffe lovey. So I love to see that. Let me know what you're reading, what you're crocheting. And if you want any of these patterns, they'll be in the description box down below. I'll also put my Buy Me a Coffee if you'd like to support the crochet positivity cause financially. You can do that through Buy Me a Coffee. And I hope that you take care of yourself. Do something good for you. Eat a healthy meal. Get a good night's sleep. Do some exercise. Take up a hobby. Read a book that really warms your soul. And no matter what, just remember, keep your shoulders back, your head up, and breathe.